Hello. It is Fate's Gift and Awakening, the chapters from Eragon. Okay, so if you watched the last video, which was Dragon Tales, you heard me read to you the story, Brim's story. So now we are going to go to Fate's Gift. That evening, after the return from Carvajal, Eragon decided to test the stone like Martin had. Alone in his room, he set it on his bed and laid 3 tools next to it. He started with the wooden mallet and lightly tapped the stone, produced a subtle ring. Satisfied, he picked up the next tool, a heavy leather hammer. A mournful peal reverberated when it struck. Lastly, he pounded a small chisel against it. The metal did not chip or scratch the stone, but it produced the clearest sound yet. As the final note died away, he thought he heard a faint squeak. Marlock said the stone was hollow. There could be something of value inside. I do not know how to open it, though. There must have been a good reason for someone to shape it. But whoever sent the stone to the spine hasn't taken the trouble to retrieve it, or doesn't know where it is. But I don't believe that a magician with enough power to transport the stone wouldn't be able to find it. So, was I meant to have it? He could not answer the question, resolved to an unsolved mystery. He picked up the tools and returned the stone to its shelf. That night he was abruptly roused from his dream. He carefully listened. All was quiet. Uneasy, he slid a hand under the mattress and grasped his knife. He waited a few seconds and slowly sank back to sleep. A squeak pierced the silence, tearing him back to wakefulness. He rolled out of bed and yanked the knife from his sheath. Fumbling with the tinder-box, he lit a candle. The door to his room was closed. Though the squeak was too loud for a mouse or a rat, he still checked under the bed. Nothing. He sat on the edge of the mattress and rubbed his eyes from sleep. Another squeak filled the air and he started violently. Where was the noise coming from? Nothing could be on the floor or walls. They were solid wood. The same went for his bed. He would have noticed if anything crawled into his straw mattress during the night. His eyes settled on the stone. He took it off the shelf and absently cradled it as he studied the room. A squeak rang in his ears and reverberated through his fingers, and it came from the stone. The stone had given him nothing but frustration and anger, and now wouldn't even let him sleep. It ignored the furious German sat solidly, occasionally peeping. But it gave one very loud squeak and fell silent. Eragon warily put it away and got back under the sheets. Whatever secret the stone held, it would have to wait until morning. The moon was shining through the window when he woke up again. The stone was rocking rapidly on the shelf, knocking against the wall. It was bathed in cool moonlight and bleached its surface. Eragon jumped out of bed, knife in hand. The motion stopped, but he remained tense when the stone started squeaking and rocking faster than ever. With an oath, he began dressing. He did not care how valuable the stone might be. He was going to get far away and bury it. The rocking stopped and the stone became quiet. It quivered, then rolled forward and dropped onto the floor with a loud thump. He inched toward the door in alarm as the stone wobbled toward him. Suddenly a crack appeared on the stone, then another and another. Transfixed, Eragon leaned forward, still holding the knife at the top of the stone. Where all the cracks met, a small piece wobbled, and there it balanced on something, then rose and toppled to the floor. Then there were a series of squeaks. A small dark head poked out of the hole, followed by an weirdly angled body. Eragon gripped the knife tighter and held very still until the creature was all the way out of the stone. It stayed in place for a moment, then it skittered into the moonlight. Eragon recoiled in shock. Standing in front of him, licking off the membrane that encased it, was a dragon. Okay, so now we know that the elf from the prologue had sent a dragon egg to the spine. The shit obviously wanted the dragon egg and seems pretty pissed that he doesn't have it. Next, you have the fact that Eragon takes the stone. It is tested by multiple people, including Eragon himself, as well as a trainer named Marlock, who apparently does not know its value, nor does he have anything that he thinks that he can use it for. And last but not least, you find out that the stone hatched, which it's not even a stone, it's an egg, and that there was a dragon inside of it. I mean, it makes sense. This is a story about elves, shades, dragons, dwarves, urgles, humans, and dragons. Alright, so now to the awakening. The dragon was no longer than his form, yet it was dignified and noble. Its scales were deep sapphire blue, the same color as the stone, but not a stone, he realized an egg. The dragon fanned its wings, and they were able to appear contorted. The wings were several times larger than its body, and riddled with thin fingers of bone that extended from the wing's front edge. Forming a line widely spaced talons, the dragon's head was roughly triangular. Two dominative white fangs curved out of its upper jaws. They looked very sharp. Its claws were also white like polished ivory and slightly stretched on an inside curve. A line of small spikes ran down the creature's spine from the base of its head to the tip of its tail. A hollow where its neck and shoulders joined created a larger than normal gap between the spikes. Eragon shifted slightly, but the giant's head snapped around, hard, ice-blue eyes fixed on him. He kept very still. It might be a formidable enemy if it decided to attack. The giant lost interest in Eragon and explored the room, squealing as it bumped into a wall of furniture. With a flutter of its wings, it leapt onto the bed and crawled onto his pillow, squeaking. Its mouth was open pitifully like a young bird's, displaying rows of pointed teeth. Eragon sat cautiously at the end of the bed. The dragon smelled his hand and nibbled his sleeve. He pulled his arm back. Eragon smiled, tight at his lips, and he looked at the small creature tentatively. He reached out with his right hand and touched its flank. A blast of icy energy surged through his hand and raced up his arm, burning in his veins like liquid fire. He fell back with a wild cry, and an iron clang filled his ears, and he heard a soundless scream of rage. Every part of his body seared with pain. He struggled to move, but was unable to. After what seemed like hours, warmth seeped into his limbs, leaving them tingling. Shivering uncontrollably, he pushed himself upright. His hand was numb, his fingers paralyzed. Alarmed, he watched as the middle of his palm shivered and formed a diffused white oval. The skin itched and burned like a spider bite. His heart pounded frantically. Eragon blinked, trying to understand what had occurred. Okay, now we're going to skip a paragraph. A scaly leg scrapped against his side, and he jerked back, but the energy not shocked him again. Puzzled, he rubbed the dragon with his right hand. The light tingling ran up his arm. The dragon nuzzled him, arching its back like a cat. He slid a finger over its thin wing membranes. They felt like old parchment, velvety and warm, but still slightly damp. Hundreds of slender veins pulsed through them. Again, the tendril touched his mind, but this time, instead of curiosity, he sensed an overpowering ravenous hunger. He got up with a sigh. This was a dangerous animal, of that he was sure, yet it seemed so helpless crawling on his bed. He had no wonder if there was any harm in keeping it. The dragon wailed in a ready tone as it licked for food. Eragon quickly stretched his hand up to keep it quiet. Put its head to keep it quiet. I'll think about that later, he decided, and left the room carefully, closing the door. He returned with 2 strips of dried meat. Okay, so now he's going to skip a few paragraphs, and just when he thought the dragon was asleep, a low humming came from his vibrating throat. Gently, he carried it to his bed and set it on a pillow. The dragon, eyes closed, wrapped its tail around the bedpost consciously. Eragon lay next to it, flexing his hand in near darkness. He faced a painful dilemma. Raising the dragon, he would become a writer. Myths and stories about writers were treasured, and being one would automatically place him among those legends. However, if the Empire discovered the dragon, he and his family would be put to death unless he joined the king. No one could or would help them. The simplest solution was to just kill the dragon, but the idea was repugnant and he rejected it. Dragons were too revered to him to even consider that. Besides, what could betray us, he thought. We live in a remote area and have done nothing to draw attention. And we skip to the dragon launched off the post glide to the floor. Eragon gingerly picked it up and left the quiet house, pausing to grab meat and several leather strips and some small rags that he could carry. The crisp morning air. Alright, skip. So technically what he did in that skip of the chapter, well, technically there's nothing else to really go over for that chapter. The dragon grows up after he builds a nice little fort in a tree. He figures out that lunch to eat himself. Eragon is constantly plagued with the thought that maybe the dragon could possibly end up dying. Might not being able to survive the cold, or maybe went down too far, and large predators such as wolves and coyotes and nonsensical nonsense might kill the dragon, but it's a dragon, come on now. Anyways, my reaction to he forms a mental connection with the dragon. Obviously, we know that. The dragon ends up being able to talk to him and calls him Eragon multiple times at the end of the chapter. Okay, so now we're going to go over my reaction after we go over the important characters. We have Eragon. You know, you gotta cut a sound for you right there. Got Eragon, the main character. Ronwell, who is Eragon's brother. Gara, which is the most accurate representation I could find. Of course, there are probably other ones. That's Eragon's uncle, and the nameless dragon so far. Who is the main character? I don't know. I kind of gave a bit of a spoiler to the dragon's name. Anyways, those are the important characters. And now we have no summary. A thank you for doing this and watching. And I hope that you listened to my quick little recounter of events. Thank you. So what I think that these chapters were mostly the exposition. These were to set up what is going to be a rising action to at least a conflict. Since this is a chapter book, I'm assuming that there are 60 chapters in here. Maybe. Well, there's at least 20. I know that. The chapters aren't really numbered. We'll find out at some point. Anyways. I think that this is an exposition for what's going to come later. For the rising action, there are probably going to be multiple climaxes throughout this. So now, there's not really much else to go over. My reaction was kind of a little stunned. Like, at first I'm like, who is this person named Eragon? What do you have to do with the Elf of the Shade? And then you find out that Discovery happens pretty much right after the prologue, right? It kind of overlaps with the prologue. And then you have this dragon that ends up coming out of this egg. You're like, whoa. And then Eragon decides, oh, let's keep the dragon because I don't want to kill it, but I don't want to serve the king either. But I want to become a writer, but I'm not sure if I will ever do that, so yeah, Eragon becomes very conflicted, but he keeps the dragon. And now at the end of the chapter, he's going to go and talk to Brew, the most knowledgeable person on legends and dragons as far as Eragon knows. So yeah, we'll come back with Eragon, the chapters 6 through 10. I will see you all later. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Don't get yourselves in trouble. Stay happy, stay positive, do what you need to do.